Cool. So I guess to open, I was interested in other like sources, writings, context about this Caucasian resistance against Russia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as much as I do like Sabres of Paradise, I do think that Leslie suffers
Lazy.
towards a Orientalist slant.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a consequence of her sources being largely Russian. But I'll tell you, it's a challenging search, finding it very much in English.
Because you're trying to find like more from like an Eastern perspective or whatever
Yeah,
Caucasian
yeah.
perspective.
Like Shamil's like secretary wrote like these Arabic, not memoirs, but like compilations of his actions and whatnot. I can find anything
Mm.
translated that was not in
Oh.
Russian. Um, I did find a collection of poems though
Oh, cool.
by this Georgian guy called Tizian Tabije. He's some years removed from this resistance. He's a Georgian that was writing poems in Tbilisi during like the 1930s.
Yeah, good guy. I went to his wedding.
He was purged during Stalin's
Uh,
reign, and a lot of these poems have cool these like remorseful references to Shamil and the Murids.
oh, as a kind of like a ghost of a resistance, like to Russian dominance.
Yeah, yeah. This one poem called Guneb. I think it would be cool to open with. And he says, "I crossed Dagestan. I saw Guneb. I am an infidel, now a Murid. My sword is an arrow. It will not bend, though it may stab me. The sky drowns the mountains in snow. Your peaks stand tall as a scaffold. When the deluge returns, when the dinosaur roams, the wind will utter its vengeful tones. I see the ghost of an eagle's ravaged nest. My eyes flow with memory's shame. How could they exterminate the sky's glory? Georgia, this mountain's grief belongs to you. Our
Mm.
bones rot beside our swords and bayonets. I pity my gangrened Georgian flesh. Those who gave their lives are safe in paradise. As for you who remain behind, my Georgian brothers, memory has no mercy. Tonight the wind shudders. Shamil prays for his men. You who lost a fierce battle internally. The night won't weep for cowards under a foreign sky. I never pulled a fatal trigger. I never donned the fighter's armor. But suddenly I too am moved into manhood. I don't want to be a poet drunk on blood. Let this day be my penitence. Let my poems wash away your treachery." End quote.
Oh, that's cool. That does feel very like, we're talking about Leslie's like limited access to the Caucasian persuasion, but that does ring of a kind of dignity that I felt was throughout the book and the descriptions of Shamil and the Murids. Like I love going back to the mountains, like regardless of who's laying claim over them, like they stand over everything else.
Right. Whether it's governed by czars or Bolsheviks or imams, there's this free spirit about them.
Yeah. The immediate quote I guess I think of is, and I know that I guess there's plenty of moments when different characters in the book are looking out at the mountains, or when they're looking out at the Alps, like this is not the Caucasus, this is a toy to compare to the Caucasian. Uh, but that very last line in the epilogue, where like going through all the different ways that Shamil was represented by the different Russians over the years as an anti-Tsarist, an anti-Russian, an Islamic extremist, and all.
A proto-communist figure. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and you can see shades of all of those. Obviously, they don't all encompass the character like this like towering figure. But all of these things they wash away, and you can still see that Shamil is someone who fought for freedom.
Yeah, I mean that last statement is perfect. Shamil fought for freedom. I mean, that's a perfect summation of what he is as a figure. You know, tinsel, no tinsel.
There's always a kind of like, and independence is even like, I don't want to like say that because after he surrenders, he does remain loyal to the Tsars, but like never giving up like his inherent grace.
Yeah, what was the thing? What was how did she say it? You know, he kept that same austere like air about him.
Yeah.
In defeat as he would have in victory.
Yeah. The only time that like, and it's cool that we also get, without like turning him into like a walking statue, we have his sort of long decline, or he, oh, I guess he's well, I guess I'm thinking two things at once.
What are both of those parallel thoughts?
Well, the way he acquiesces to the Tsar, so like completely, like he like retreats completely from Dagestan. Even like when they're rebelling again, he has no place in talking to them in one way or another. Like, I don't know, there's just something so sad about when he's like just like trying to get permission to go to Mecca.
He has to beg so brutally for it, and make these bows
Right.
and references to the Tsar, even after making an oath of loyalty.
But I guess it's the situation, right? And it's like how he wears it. Because then like, the way he had to like for years like suffer the that Polish guy.
Yeah.
An evil Polish guy. The way that sometimes they'll just like let you have like Leslie Blanche will just like let you have like a villain to be like, oh my god. Like for a while Zaidate was that.
Yeah. Okay, so I do have the Polish guards like name in front of me, and I feel as though I'm going to kill it.
It was a lot of consonants next to each other.
Przalowski.
Yeah, when I saw that name, like, oh, this is not a Russian man.
No.
Was it Przalowski, I guess?
Yeah.
Oh, well. Polish people.
Sorry. I'm contemplating calling him Lavsky for short.
Lavsky, yes.
Just to refer to him by name and instead of the Pole, as Leslie Blanche calls him.
A Pole. Man, back in the old days, you could just call people bluntest things. I guess Pole is better than. I don't feel too whatever. It's on West Side Story anymore. It doesn't like Polak doesn't have like the sting that it might have once had.
I could see an argument today that white versus white hatreds are I guess funny today.
Right. I don't want to make the Italian listeners upset. It's all chill in America now. Between the whites, at least.
Oh, yeah. It is chill between the whites in America. God bless. We'll fix ourselves someday. We'll fix ourselves for sure.
Yeah. We're working on it. Speaking of ourselves, though, this is Roberto here with Corbin.
Hi, listeners. This is Corbin.
Listen to part 3 of the Sabres of Paradise podcast. Surely whoever's listening here is familiar with what this is. It's a really weird spot to jump into. But in case you're just tuning in, you turn the dial on your radio and somehow it came up. This is Pleasant Evenings Book Club. We're doing the third and final installment of our series covering Sabres of Paradise. Covering
the Caucasus resistance against Imperial Russia.
Yeah. So it starts out with kind of like the last sort of, and even this is like with heavy scare quotes, victory that Shamil got to enjoy of leveraging these valuable hostages to get his son back, as one might remember from part 2. And then the loss of the Murid cause and the subsequent years of
exile,
Yeah.
imprisonment. Nice save. Good save, by the way.
I really liked this part. This was a great read throughout, of course. But I love the sting of tragedy. That kind of this slow motion decline,
This
the other shoe dropping on the turn of history, the unbearable weight of the wheel turning.
nice. Well said. Stylistically, it's a lot of fun to read.
Mm-hmm.
The jumps between the more interpersonal aspects and then the larger geopolitical scopes of power that she covers at this time.
Yeah,
It shouldn't be so seamless, but
yeah.
I think it is.
Right, and it weirdly enough, it almost feels like and I wrapped up the reading today, but it almost feels like part of the way that it was done was by like cleaving them further. Like this is the section where we finally get to meet Shamil as a person instead of like as a faraway symbol. Once he doesn't have to play that role anymore, then we get more like of the interpersonal relationships he has with his fellow naibs outside of just like feuds and loyalties.
Power plays, and he's a sweet family man.
Yeah,
What was one of my interpersonal impressions of him.
right. And we saw this, I guess, in the earlier parts where she just tells us that he always loved children. But we actually get to see like little scenes or descriptions of like every time he sees children, he invites them over. And like he let the children play, like when they were hostages, he always had like sweets for them. And like the way that no matter what, like children just like got him. They always loved him. That's that's a more than a skill. I think it shows. I think like children respond really well to confident kindness
Yeah.
or however else. Like if I get so nervous if someone asks me to hold a baby.
Like,
And I think
no, I'm gonna drop this thing.
yeah. And sometimes I swear the babies I can feel it, and they're like I don't feel like I'm in good hands. Just given the vibes you're putting out.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's definitely like a survival instinct, right? For a child to like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm safe with this one, or I'm unsafe
Yeah,
with this other
right.
one.
There's like different like I think like kids they're still learning about the world when they look at adults, and I'm still not used to 100% to being an adult. Hashtag millennial adulting or whatever. I'm still not fully like used to it, but I realize like when children look at you as an adult, they're like, you know how things work. Like
You haven't figured it out, type of thing.
this kid, like I work at a library, and like one time like this kid like was like looking at different books, and he turns to me while I'm putting books away and just asks me, why is Hong Kong a different country from China? And like I a weird kid, I that's not the normal question, but that he would just ask any adult is telling.
That is awesome.
And I don't know what his parents' views are. Like it's a long story. I don't know what to say.
What did you say?
Well, I told him that's a long story. Then the kid just went, okay. And I don't know if he was like, I didn't want to hear the long story or.
I lost interest now.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I think I was also like, I'm not gonna say the wrong thing. If I don't know if his parents loved Shen Yuen, what was that show? Shen Yuen?
Yeah.
What was I saying? But right, and I guess they only show him like just like easily like being at ease with the children.
I guess children being at ease around him, because this would be less funny than your story. But when I was watching Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship for the first time in theaters, I thought their situation became incredibly hopeless after Gandalf died.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh no, they lost their wise old wizard. They're fucked. There's no way.
Right. He put the Fellowship together. He called the council with Elrond.
He was a wise old man that had it all figured out. It looked like so.
Yeah. I guess a detour. I never got, or like I always thought it was funny how, and I haven't read Lord of the Rings or the Silmarillion past like what we did for podcast. That scene where when does it happen? Like he sees the ring that Bilbo has, and he senses something about it, and then he like goes to the library to read as much as he can. There's like a furious studying montage.
Yeah.
So like he did the homework, and apparently there was homework to be done. I thought it was so funny. Because I don't know, isn't Gandalf like an ancient being or something?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think so. But like, I don't know if that canonicity was established by Lord of the Rings.
I guess I'll have to go back and see that movie again. What was he studying?
We could revisit that later. What was that?
What was he studying? Was it unrelated? He saw the rings. Like, oh my god, I forgot I have a finals in metallurgy.
I suspect that he was trying to confirm like the historic direction that the ring ownership could have fallen under.
Oh, to see if like could that be the ring? Was the last known location? Or...
Right, like okay, this guy died in this location. This ring could have been picked up here and up here.
Oh, that's good.
Maybe.
But that's a side thing. Maybe they should do one of those relaxing beats to chill/study too. And it's Gandalf with his tomes.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
I'll look into this.
Although he looks a little harried in that scene, I think. So like
maybe like intense beats to
study too. Like 80s Karate Kid vibes. I think that's definitely why kids trusted him too, or like why that would have been shared.
Wait, we're talking about Gandalf or back to Shamil?
Back to Shamil.
Yeah. Although there was an interesting thing where, like, I think like part of the tragedy, maybe that's a little, the part of the loss ultimately is after 30 years, especially like his authority is waning, even among his naibs. Like we get that entire episode where he has to pretend to ask for 1 million rubles.
I do really enjoy the way he got himself out of that though.
Yeah, the last bits of the theatricality, like
right. I mean, it was clever and well poised, right? Taking a hermit that
they just had this famous hermit
living in the mountain who was also, I guess, somewhat touched by God, right? And then I love their speaking points that came back up again.
Yeah,
that
the world is a carcass.
The world is a carcass. Yeah, he who seeks it is a dog. I appreciate that so much. I was so happy to see it again, like twice in its part.
Yeah, like who knew it was Chekhov's maxim. What
was that last part? I'm sorry.
Maxim. I'm trying to think of another. What do you call it? A saying. It
Mantra?
ended up being Chekhov's mantra. Whatever. It ended up being a plot critical thing. It wasn't just like, and this describes the kind of intensity of Murid humility. It ended up being like the tool to let Shamil gracefully accept a lesser reward,
and to finally after 30-ish years escape from this hostage situation.
I have this quote talking about the like that he had to do that is also telling. Shamil was in a sense himself a prisoner. For all his autocratic rule, he could not go against the will of his people. In this respect, for all his autocratic rule, he could not go against the will of his people, for he would have risked losing the support of his most puissant naibs. Wait, how do you pronounce that word?
Either naibs or
no, sorry, no. Puissant? Puissant?
Puissant? Puissant.
Looks like it's like a like the so puissant.
We'll get better at pronouncing things foreign to us listeners.
Yeah, it's unfortunately I shouldn't have. The quote isn't even that nice, but I think it's just a telling thing about
Shamil situation.
Yeah, that wasn't ringing with the poetry of Lermontov or whatever.
Well, it just sucks. Okay, it's because like English has some pretty bad orthography, right? But then French is probably second in its awful
Yeah,
orthography.
yeah. French is a prank.
I find it way too nasal sounding to like really have an appreciation of like, oh yeah, so romantic. Like, this reminded me of a portion of this part actually, and that is Madame Drancy, the French woman, being hostage as well, and
Yeah.
Shamil and the Murid's treatment of her letters that they were initially receiving was really, that cracked me up.
We'll just rip it up, cause
Right, and it's like, oh, he has so many questions about French. What is this strange language? Why do you employ such a script? Do you seek to trick me?
right. There's a strange like battle of wills there.
Especially, yeah, Princess Anna and Shamil. I think there's very clearly like a love-hate relationship going on there.
Yeah, yeah, and they talk about it later. It's neat. I really like that epilogue where they like, go through every character, but then like for a lot of these people, like that situation seemed to have been like the brightest point in their lives. Like then they would come to miss that high drama.
Right. It's like, okay, back to court life now. Back to
that kind of like rotting placidity.
Yeah, the provincial stagnation.
Yeah, and once again, I feel the worst for Madame Drancy because like when she's there, like she's not valuable as a hostage. She just happened to be there. She does what she can to like tutor the kids or whatever, like make the best of the situation.
Right.
And
making sure they're well practiced in French still through the readings of Imitation of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and like I mean, what else do you have to do? Like you're in a cloistered in a single area of the owl.
Probably shitting in a single bucket that's shared with 30 other people.
Was it there? Oh my god!
I think it was 34 people in that room initially with all the servants and whatnot.
That seemed hellish. I loved also that bit where Lizzie Blanche, like, whenever like she comes in as a narrator, like she's not like an authority on. Well, I believe that she is, but like she doesn't present herself as like as some kind of ultimate authority on the Shamil or the Dagestani or the Circassians or anything. She defers to her sources, and like she's just to be like a lover of these characters in this place. So she talks about like struggling about.
I think she came into this project as like this passionate student and learner.
Yeah.
And that is her voice of narrator.
Yeah. And like there's a deep empathy for these people who are hostage, where she's like, in all these descriptions, no one talked about the toilet situation. Were they next to the buildings? Or like she's like trying to like compare it to known
situations in that context back then.
Yeah, but it's cool because it's like it's an interesting like historical question. How can we know? What do we know about these day-to-day like these menial details of life instead of just the drama, and which is like interesting. But how did they do that? But like the way she frames it isn't just about the curiosity about that, but like, so we know how bad it was for them based on how they had to be locked up in a poorly ventilated like shed or whatever. But was it even worse than they say? Like, there's so many little details of suffering that got lost to the record.
Or just staying unsaid due to, Victorian sensibility.
Yeah. And it also, and the way she, like, it's good, like, work as a historian is second guessing your sources, like, what their biases and proclivities are.
Yeah.
Because you understand this hostage thing, and she does that thing where she jumps around, where for a while this hostage situation of meeting the Shamil, being captive, in this strange faraway place was like talk of the town later in Georgia and in the rest of Europe. But oh yeah, like but then that's going back to Madame Drancy. That's why I felt even worse for her because like Anna has that kind of melancholic return, but she's still she lives in comfort as a princess.
But
But
Madame Drancy has
it,
no such advantage.
right, like was it like she comes home and like her mom died and her husband left. She's left to like raise two children on her own.
She tried writing about her story as hostage, but I guess was extremely unpopular back then.
Yeah, because like by the time she did it, it was old news. So
That's rough.
that tells you like there can be like these great passions, and there's still like the whims of an audience.
Her, at least her son and like grandchildren held her in super high regard.
Yeah,
Not just because of the hostage situation, but because she was able to raise her kids on her own.
none of I would say microcosm, but like I guess like as a parallel to the Shamil thing, he lost the Caucasus slowly by first losing the trust and loyalty of all the different tribes in the region. Even the ones who are loyal to him are loyal to him, like insofar as they're all together. But it's also like it's autocratic and yet very democratic. Shamil gets to be a monarchist and a communist, proto-communist at the same time. Uh,
I guess he's clearly autocratic, but I think his autocracy worked in populist manners.
yeah,
In the same way that Julius Caesar or Augustus were also very autocratic rulers, but were forced to be populist because of the dangers of
right.
such a position.
Yeah, it's interesting that is something that does recur in those figures, because that was the populare, whatever. Like they could make their voices heard, and they could threaten stability of your reign. And it's interesting how it's almost the opposite for the Tsars. Like Tsar Alexander II, I guess according to this book, and I guess we see that, I guess bears out. He gives up some authority, and all that does is destabilize Russia for him.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing. He offers his constitution, and he gets bombed on the way. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I think that shows that Russian autocracy was so theologically ingrained.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's like the authority, at least the Tsar's authority seems to only work insofar as it is absolute. And that might also explain, because I felt like there was, like she says a personal thing, but it's also kind of ideological. The way that Tsar Nicholas made it his life's mission to bring down the Caucasus. They lose an entire war on the side, and that only reinforces the need to bring the Caucasus to heal for him.
Yeah.
And I guess it's kind of ideological. She puts it in like these like petty personal terms, like this mountain guy challenging me, the Tsar.
Yeah. Which Alexander II did not have that view. He viewed him as a hyper-worthy, military foe. Tsar Nicholas just took it so personally.
Right, and just became like a protracted 30-year thing of wills between like two very willed forces. Like one, like I said, and then it's interesting that the turn, it almost like was that the conquering was in the end. Well, not the very end, I guess, but at least as far as the clash with Shamil was gentle. Alexander II, like him and Baryatinsky succeeded by treating with all the different tribes and offering to be more gentle and forgiving.
Right, offering clemency, right? Like, okay, go to the Russians. We won't punish you.
Mm-hmm.
Although I am getting hints here that after Imam Shamil made his downfall, I mean, there is still brutalities and pockets of resistance going on.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Like, I think in part it was like once they lost their worthy ally, like this, like if I guess the Russians still thought of the Caucasians as savages, but with Shamil, they got to be noble savages, to borrow some, like the way people talk about the Native Americans in the Wild West. There might be a level of that, and I wasn't sure about the timeline, but it also had to do with like Baryatinsky's being deposed, right, because of his
Oh,
affair.
that's true. His scandals.
Because like but he was like, unfortunately, like scandals aside, he was like a very like savvy like political thinker, not just a military genius or whatever. Whatever. I don't know. I don't know about war.
Well, I guess his brilliance is that there's awareness on his part of building infrastructure being directly tied to winning this conflict.
Mm-hmm. Right, like chopping down the forests, building bridges,
Probably building other roads.
Yeah,
as well.
which the was it who started this Yermolov,
Yeah,
right? Like it was like under him that in a more brutal way the Georgian military highway was built, and that was essential to the Russian efforts there. It really does come down to the more boring details. It's not about who the bravest fighters are, because if there's enough resources, then you like ultimately a side has to win out, but it could take you up to 30 years to just beat people down.
right.
Who knows how much longer it could have gone.
I guess it came down to who was willing to build more and provide more for the everyday village.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm thinking of is because like that like did win over enough Caucasian tribes to at least like settle the central resistance against Russia. I think it's telling that like this more gentle hand, this more like people oriented approach can be taken away, and I think that's kind of telling. Like the one of the biggest downsides of autocratic models is if you have like a wise and good ruler, then things run really well. But it's a roll of the dice. What if like someone else, like what if the one who's really good got embroiled in a scandal, or
Right.
their son is an asshole?
Right. You end up with another genocidal maniac or some hyper paranoid Ivan the Terrible.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing. It's interesting, like the way that Shamil's authority is maybe contrasted with the autocracy of the top-down Russian system, is that he did rely on earning their loyalty. Although even if he would also enforce it, walk around with an executioner everywhere he went.
Right.
And I guess like also Russia, like that authority also was a paper tiger. Like it wasn't, we know what happened to the Tsars not too long after.
Yeah. What was it, like 60 years later? 50?
Yeah, it was 1859 that Shamil gave his sword to Baryatinsky, and 1917. Yeah, so yeah, 60 years, whatever, 60 years.
I think the Caucasus like direction in history into 1918 and like post after that with the Soviet rule is incredibly interesting.
Yeah. Like the way that like I thought it was interesting, like of course, like for when Shamil like gave up, or surrendered. Gave up sounds like he was a quitter, like he was at the end of his when he surrendered. I was like, I was like, oh, and that was the end of it, but like then it turned out that there was more resistance to follow. You're like, oh, of course, why would they? Okay, like maybe they weren't going to organize themselves around the prophet of the third prophet of Islam, the second prophet of Islam, but they're still going to feel like a separate body from Russia.
Right. To this day.
Yeah. Right. When was was like in the 2000s there was a Chechen uprising?
It was like 1998, I believe.
Chechen. Okay, there was. I guess
There's a lot.
it's been kind of, yeah. I'm seeing some stuff here. Oh my God. Dates from 1999 to 2009.
Jesus. So there was like another 30-year conflict. Holy shit.
And that's just Chechnya, right?
Right, you still have Dagestan too, and I
Yeah.
think there was a shit ton of risings in like Dagestan recently too, even
Yeah.
over recruitment into the Ukrainian war.
It's so weird. I guess, not capital H history, I guess, in the way that Fukuyama intended it, but like history never really stopped in Russia.
No,
I guess like from the perspective of like us comfortably over here, well, no, not so comfortably, but when Putin I guess annexed Crimea, that was like one that flared up some attention, but then invaded Ukraine, like we're still doing these kinds of things.
right. I guess like
Mm.
history never really stopped there, as opposed to in the Western United States after the fall of Soviet bloc countries and Soviet style communism. I think there was an era of okay, well, history as we know it is now ending.
Right. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't. Now here, I'm really scared of talking out of pocket. I don't. Modern politics
Um,
and all that. Um,
I guess my history is just I don't know. There was this air of remorse amongst Georgians, like that poem I opened with kind of
yeah,
displays of like, okay, maybe we chose the wrong side, and Stalin's place within Georgia and this Caucasian context is also kind of
yeah. I thought it was funny how when Stalin came up, the way Leslie Blanche like introduced him as Stalin the Georgian.
I love his Georgian name so much more
Yeah, was it
than
Joseph something big name?
Stalin, then known as Yosef Jujashvili.
That sounds Caucasian.
Yeah, I don't know. It just looks prettier than Stalin.
Yeah, I've heard that sometimes he would be self-conscious about like his Georgian accent.
That's unfortunate. I
Yeah,
haven't heard a Georgian accent. I don't think.
I wouldn't know a Russian accent if a Georgian accent if
Yeah, I don't think I'd be able to pick it out. Frankly, I've heard some like Belgian people speak, and they sound fairly Slavic to me, which is probably like
belt.
unfair to say, but I have a bad ear.
When I speak in Belgium, they speak French.
Uh in Belgium, they would either speak French, Dutch, or maybe Frisian,
Frisian.
or some
Man,
dialects of Dutch.
Europe's got so much stuff going on. It's crazy. I mean, that's history, telecommunications, and all that. There's so many different languages and peoples, and like in Europe, America really flattened everything, despite having so much more space.
Yeah, hopefully someday we could be as linguistically as diverse.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, let's give it a few thousand years.
I think it'll be quicker than that.
You think?
I give it 200 to have the same linguistic diversity.
All right, we'll come back in 200 years and we'll see.
I don't know. I just think technology is kind of
It's gonna accelerate that stuff. You don't think it's gonna like help? It's not. You don't think it's gonna like make it more uniform,
um
like the way that like accents are kind of like
fading away.
smoothing out.
That could be an effect that's fair. Things could even become more linguistically homogenous.
That I guess it depends on how politics play out.
I think politics might play out beneficially.
Yeah, but I'll use myself as an example. Like, I grew up in Nicaragua, and like I achieved this accent by just watching a lot of TV.
I feel TV has a fair variety of accents. I mean, you've achieved the ideal.
With a Midwestern neutral American accent.
Yeah, that's well done. I don't know. I myself am happy whenever I see like a bilingual signs in grocery stores and whatnot. I think it's
Oh
cool,
yeah.
and I don't remember noticing that growing up.
Well, if you come to Miami, you won't even see bilingual signs. You'll just see some Spanish, just Spanish signs.
That's dope.
Yeah, but like I didn't I didn't attempt to cultivate this American accent. I just my my mind was colonized effectively enough.
It's interesting that it's the American accent that's pursued versus like the more British posh one.
Yeah. It was America's turn to play with the hegemony. Mom says it's my turn to play with hegemony. Um, yeah, I think it's like I think it depends on like different relations. Like I think like places that have more ties to England learn the English way of saying things more.
So say like India is probably more inclined to
Yeah,
have
to
that
lean.
posh styling.
Yeah, that'd be the first one I think of. I know there's other. I don't want to. Again, I'm terrified of. I don't know. We'll have to read more books about these other regions.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Rice is the spice of life.
Yeah, but anyways, what were we? What were we talking about?
I just talk about bad Russian. It's kind of interesting that Shamil never quite picked up Russian
Yeah,
super successfully.
which is I don't know. It's cool that he found a Bible in Arabic that like in this like remote part of Russia.
Yeah, and he was so he leaned in heavily into this forgiveness paradigm for a bit.
Yeah, I don't know. Like that is really curious. Like he would talk about like the way things used to be, and it didn't seem like it was like sometimes I guess it might have been with kind of wistful like when I was in charge, but it seemed to be like how curious that you do things this way. I'm used to it being the other way, but I see now the value in like
And the way you're doing things.
yeah, and I guess like he like I think a big part of it comes from like when he surrendered, right? He expected to die on the spot.
Yeah, he thought he was being led to the executioner.
And like what a fascinating like journey to be humbled in that way. I guess like he I'm sure like Russia had other reasons, but like the way that he benefited from that clemency.
Yeah. Well, so what would have been the Russian motive there? Clemency gives him legitimacy, so legitimacy excuses that this conflict went on for so stupid long.
Right. I figured it was like a kind of like a political calculation there. Like you can't make him into a martyr on top of
Well, that's true too.
like the plan originally was for Jamaluddin to inherit the Caucasus once they won. Oh yeah, my God, for an hour we talking.
Jamaluddin, what a sad figure, huh?
Yeah, like the way that that Leslie Blanche like foreshadowed his role in all the dramas. I was waiting for something crazy to happen, and then it was the saddest thing. But it's also like this kind of like gentle thing, like where we have like more of the sort of battle of spirits and ways of life. Like it's like the battles were just a kind of stalemate for 30 years, and it came down to these other things, like
Right.
just like a general like sick of war and the appeal of the kind of globalized like Western ways and all that. Like Jamil like was so won over by Russia. Like he was the Tsar's like favorite son, seemingly. He went over that like the reason why he accepted to go back was not to see his family. Like he didn't feel like an Avar or whatever. Like, he didn't feel Caucasian like that anymore. He went out of his duty to Russia and his fealty to the Tsar.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even remember the Avar tongue. I do wonder how much he remembered the look of his father and
Right.
any siblings he had back then.
And like I guess like a combination of the weather and the more hard living that the mountains require, plus just general depression, he just sort of like collapses, and it's so sad. Like that's like to me like that's like Shamil's like ultimate like loss is like when he later he's in Russia and they ask him what he thinks of it, and he says like I can see now why my son died.
Yeah, that's the real tragedy and kicker of it is that I don't know how enjoyable exile life truly was for Shamil, but
Mhm.
he got to live some semblance of life that Jamil got to enjoy
Yeah,
before going back home.
because like Shamil was treated well, and Jamaluddin was treated as like again like the Tsar who's like second to God in in Russia, um, like as his like as his chosen.
Right. And this was the more authoritarian czar that gave Jamil more love and attention. It was that Tsar Nicholas figure, right?
hmm So in a sense, it was like so him doing that. It's like whatever Russia means, whatever. If it's like Russia itself, like adopting him.
Right. To call tuberculosis back then consumption
Classic
and saying
wasting
that
disease.
right to say that Jamil had died of consumption is kind of fitting, not only at that physical level but probably at that like existential level even of being forced to be so alone in this burden and sacrifice.
Man, that in those times, disease could be so romantic. Like, like it was thought that like having your heart broken would give you cholera or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, so it's perfect for this time and for like the story as told. The biggest reason probably has a lot to do with the weather.
The mountain air, which I thought was actually beneficial for consumption back then. I
Yeah,
thought they would take people into the mountains.
isn't that true? But I guess it's in the dosage. It's very mountainous what he was.
That's okay. So he overdosed on the mountain air.
He overdosed on mountain. Yeah, that's what happened. His tolerance wasn't really high. Right, but like that loneliness where Shamil's like first is like so happy to see him, but like very quickly, like everything is like a little embarrassment. He has to undress in the field at the hostage exchange to wear like these clothes that he doesn't care about. Shamil like brings him along. He has his other sons take him out hunting, but he's always like his melancholy is so like deep. Like they'll just catch him looking up to the north whenever they're out. He talks to his brothers about like showing him his maps and his books and all that. And after a while, like Shamil has like all of his stuff taken away. Like it's a sad in every way, the way that Shamil like gives up on him too. Like he has him back. Like that's supposed to be like that's the happiest thing. For a while, it seemed like you said, he was like a family man. It seemed,
Yeah.
Leslie Blanche says that in the end, it wasn't his hatred of the Russians or whatever. What is it like? He wasn't defeated by the Russians' hate for him, but by his love for his family.
Yeah, that's. I think that's what the quote was. I did have it quoted and highlighted. It was as if at last the great Imam was conquered, not by the weight of Russian arms, by love for his family and remaining followers.
That was it. With Jamal, it was so sad how quickly that his hopes of his reuniting with him like popped. It's like he's fighting for a free and pious Dagestan. Presumably for his children and his people to enjoy, and his first son, his would be heir. He's fighting to get him back. It's like a little microcosm, like getting the Caucasus back, whatever, getting his son back. And surely if he just stays true to his cause, then God will grant him victory and all that. And it was like he arrived already dead. Like he wasn't gonna have the son that he lost. Was it that other line? Like truly, like he had lost his son that day. And he would never come back the day that he gave him up to the Tsar.
Right. All that remained for Shamil was this idealized son.
Right, which he had to give up on.
I guess effectively lose twice.
Yeah, and then of course, going back to Jamal, like how sad to lose the life that you come to love and die alone. Like
die alone of I guess loneliness.
Even though his other sons, they lived interesting lives, and Qazi Muhammad seemed like an able heir.
Yeah, the epilogue and the ending and how his sons continued on is cool. Yeah, Qazi Muhammad was definitely a worthy heir. Definitely, you could take the Caucasian out of the mountains, but you can't. you just can't remove that that air, that spirit of mountaineer freedom.
Right. Even I guess I mean, unless they take them when they're 8 years old and sit them at the White Palace.
Right, and show him all the silver and gold, and
Even then, he was still like so good at riding horses, and he still carried himself with that kind of dignity and those eagle features that Leslie Blanche loves so much. I guess there's still a lot of that, but
different naibs, different murids navigate the polemic, the right word of maintain that air of like mountaineer dignity and spirit, when also navigating a far more, I guess, westernized context.
Yeah, like that was a really interesting part. It was entertaining, and just like the way that Shamil is exiled into Russia is so strange, because it's like he's just living out his transition to the next life, is how she kind of frames it. Of course, she had a beautiful way of describing it. But
some of the scenes kind of broke out into like these weird like sitcom situations, though. Like,
like for the people hosting, it was like Perfect Strangers or something.
Yeah. When the Naibs was wearing cologne too, and they're at the dinner table, and like Shamil smells it, he's like, "What the fuck is that?"
It's like, oh, like the way she describes like how badly it stunk of perfume. And then what's his name? He had two guys, I forget which one it was, that he's like, oh, I over perfumed my handkerchief, I apologize.
I think it was Captain Romanovsky at that point.
Okay, that was the first one, right?
Yeah, or the second. I think the first one was. Sorry, bear with me here. I'm happy I highlighted so much. I just wish I had organized a little bit better.
Yeah.
I thought Bogoslavsky was the first.
Oh yeah, that was the one who like he was like never, no one else, and then it was very dramatic. It was very scary whether or not he would accept the second guy.
Yeah. Bogoslavsky has some funny situations too, showing them the opera houses and the Amazonian opera, and Bogoslavsky was asking him his thoughts. Shamil smiled, irony again, lighting the half-closed eyes. Yes, truly, had such a regiment, Gunib never would have fallen.
I love those stories.
I have the pineapple highlighted as a quote here in all caps.
Yeah. He goes on his like humiliation tour as a hero to the Russians. Right. And I guess we can talk about that later, but the pineapple thing is so interesting, because like once he's settled in, they bring him out to these parties, and it's like because pineapples are so difficult to acquire and to keep fresh that they would just remain frozen and on display for months before they were even eaten.
Right.
And it's just kind of like that was kind of Shamil's situation, where he would live out the rest of his days like as a curiosity to all these people.
Impressive display at these formal dinner parties.
It's fascinating. I think like, the positive way of looking at it is obviously it's like, wow, this is new. Someone from all the way over there, this place that we've only read about, and this beautiful poetry and the accounts from our sons and brothers and whatever far off relatives. And there's the aspect of they recognize that this is a very magnetic, captivating, heroic figure, but it's also like
there's an air of condescension with it too.
Yeah, like it comes with also like patting themselves on the back.
Yeah.
Did you watch Oppenheimer?
I did not get to watch Oppenheimer now.
Oh, I mean, you don't need me to tell you Oppenheimer is good. It's good. But there's a thing where with Oppenheimer, how like he made the bomb, was a big celebrity, and then he lost his security clearance because of Cold War stuff. He wanted there to be less bombs, and America obviously wanted there to be more bombs.
Right. I mean, I think there was the Truman position of like, oh, well, we want like 50 bombs launched into communist China. Or that was right. MacArthur that had that position.
Or MacArthur, yeah. Yeah, like he wanted to use the Korean War to extend all the way up into China.
Yeah. with including the use of those fucked up bombs.
Yeah, and right, Truman like had that in his back pocket, like at least as a bargaining chit, knowing like, he could
Right.
like threaten to use it. What's his name? I always forget his name. The guy from Barry Goldwater talked about how he would, if I'm president, here's how I'll use the bomb. Hold on, I'm trying to find this quote.
No, good. Yeah, we ourselves have had some insane fucking leaders. Like,
Yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt was a crazy warmonger as well. When Woodrow Wilson finally entered into World War One, Teddy Roosevelt had offered to create the Rough Riders once again, and that he would go there and be a part of that bloodshed again.
That's something that we don't have, is those kinds of like stuffed people remembering all their past victories. It's an interesting, like, oh yeah, Grandpa will tell you all about his campaigns if you ask him. Like people that like fought in Vietnam, it's just shame and trauma. Oh yeah, so here's a quote. Here's a quote from the Oppenheimer. It's like one of the last quotes in the movie, where Einstein is talking to Oppenheimer, and they're saying like, now it's your turn to deal with the consequences of your achievement. They'll pat you on the back, tell you all is forgiven. Just remember, it won't be for you. It'll be for them.
Wow, that fits.
Yeah, kind of thing. Like praising them, like praising him as a way to praise themselves.
Praise themselves, right? Shamil's the hero that killed Russians, and we got Shamil, so that makes us even bigger heroes,
right? And even I think like Leslie Blanche like has a quote, kind of to that effect, where. Yeah. But other way, like, but the experience of Shamil and his naibs and his family, it's really cool how they navigate those kinds of like culture differences. Like, I'm forgetting his full name, but that guy Hagio, he was like his second in command, or not his second, but he was he was like more. I think he was the one who put on the perfume.
He was the one that talked about speaking that like broken Russian pigeon of like, oh yeah, the Russian women give me their jam or something like that.
Oh yeah, that was him.
I think he was saying that to Romanovsky too, and he just never pursued what the fuck he meant by the jam.
But it was so funny, the guy who's like, he's talking about the women giving him their jam and just not asking.
Like, yeah, okay, it doesn't make sense for sure.
It's like, obviously it didn't leave his head. He had to write it down, but it's... what were we...
This I think that's Kafka-esque, right? I think you mentioned before, like the stranger and the judge, or the guy's lawyer, like being in this weird position and like...
Oh, in the trial?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all like trying to learn like how things are done.
But those who know like how things are done, I don't know, their positions are kind of comical.
Oh, you're talking about like when we were talking about the stranger, how the judge is like, this weird.
Yeah.
Right. I thought you were talking about the trial, like in Kafka's The Trial. There's a lawyer who's like, okay, let me handle things, but nothing seems to move forward. Which is like I reflects the Kafka-esque reality, the like moment of Shamil's death and like the Russian
bureaucracy being like just unmoving to having his sons show up.
Yeah, man, that was so sad. Like, I'm glad that he got to see Mecca and Medina.
It must have been like it must have felt very full circle for him to be dying so close to where Muhammad was buried, and
right.
I don't know, there's something fitting about it.
Yeah, man, there's so many layers of like, I don't know, natural metaphor. We've been saying tragedy a lot. This is the most. I mean, this is the end. This is where, like we said, like history kind of. What is that? That poem you read? It was like, was it history is unforgiving?
It's a good poem. It's a good collection of poems. I could send you the EPUB file, PDF file.
Mm-hmm.
Memory has no mercy.
Oh, is that it? That might have been
history though.
That might have been the what I was thinking of.
Yeah, I guess so.
But like I'm glad he got to go. It's so interesting seeing like he okay, so like learns like the ways of the Russian Christians. He finds some kind of peace with it in his own like cloistered way. They still do their prayers, 5 times a day, and they're teaching like they still stay close to their faith, and it's so important. Like the way it's so important for him to go see the Kaaba, that he got to go, and then like that kind of reconnection with Islam. I guess like he never like lost touch, but like he's exiled from like an Islamic context for
Yes,
was it 20 years, whatever.
Yeah,
And he goes in through Turkey, like meets the Sultan.
he gets to resolve a
Right.
conflict between Turkey and Egypt.
To them, like he was a hero and a genuine leader. And I love his argument is like, oh, the Gyars, sorry, pronunciation once again. Like they would love it if we fought amongst each other. Let's be unified.
Yeah,
It was one of the great like themes in this was a great opportunity. Like reading this book was a great opportunity for me to like read a little bit more about Islam. Like there is some beautiful principles and poetry and like even like the theme of like brotherhood of like this like universal like connection that they'll have. Like this idea of everyone like knowing where Mecca is and praying to the same spot.
there's I think there's some like badass like elements of freedom involved with it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'll admit, I had attempted. I'm pretty close to finishing reading the Kala portion, which is like the first part of it.
Oh, so that's one thing I haven't.
And like you're saying, there's some cool like tidbits of poetry and brotherhood and reason involved, but there is a spirit of freedom and self determination.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
For like all peoples.
Of course, like I have some like reservations generally about organized religion personally, but it's cool to appreciate it on its own terms, like the same way that Shamil appreciated the Christian teachings.
Likewise, I'm critical of anyone who's going to say like, oh, I know the answers. I know the answers to everything.
Yeah.
Here it all is in a single text. But it's nice to engage with it on its own terms
Mm-hmm.
and in terms that aren't so
like oppositional or
asking the wrong questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like 20 years ago, I think the popular rhetoric around Islam and America's war on
Right.
terror was, oh, is Islam a religion of peace or not? And it's like, well, that's not.
That's a crazy question. Like such a.
It's loaded. It's a fucked up question to be asking too, though. Like, no one's asking that of Christianity. No one's asking that of any other organized religion. Not because those are religions of peace, but because those are the religions with the more powerful context.
Yeah. Yeah, like the only people like asking that question, the most annoying like Richard Dawkins brand of atheism that was popular in that time, who also were incredibly, whatever criticism they launched against Christianity, they were even less generous to Islam at the time.
Right.
So, little things about Islam before we talk about the Shamil's death. Qazi Muhammad, he has that like sad thing with his wife who like doesn't really love him,
Kazimet or something.
and it's kind of like
right?
Qazimet. Yeah. He's like always pining after her. She's like gone away. They never really reunite.
That was a fucked up marriage. I'll say that.
Yeah. And he doesn't remarry until like later, and what is it? He says like I'll only remarry if it's to Habibet, who was related to one of Shamil's naibs. And then they describe her as like really like strong-willed and pious and like studious, and it's really cool how she like even gets to like talk to Shamil and say that like you saying you're a prophet is heresy.
It's sacrilegious.
And I was wondering about that. I don't know if we talked about it before, if I didn't get the chance to, but like one of the principal tenets of Islam, from what I read in my little book, was that
Muhammad is the seal of the
final
prophets.
prophet. Yeah. I was wondering like how did they square that? And the other thing was that when they're at the zoo and Shamil looks at the monkeys and he says, those are actually, they used to be Jews. And it's like, it's written in the book, like monkeys come from Jews. Like I was like so taken aback. I actually had to look it
You're
up,
like, what
and
the fuck?
so I just googled that. I was like, where does this come? He's saying it comes from the Quran. Like, no way. And I did find the story. In case you're wondering, the Quran doesn't say that monkeys are the descendants of Jews. So you don't have to cancel Shamil or the Prophet. Like, you don't have to cancel either of them.
That was a wild story and wild take though.
Yeah, because Shamil is usually so like reserved and so like thoughtful, like giving like the judgment of a great leader. And then at the zoo, like it's a weird out of pocket moment for him.
Yeah, he'll say some crazy shit during his exile. I enjoy that he never quite understood the value of like rubles.
Or if he did, he just didn't value money in the same way. I did. That was like a really like nice, great. Because he would give like beggars like 10 rubles at a time,
Yeah,
which I guess was like a lot. And they say like next time we recommend you give them kopecks instead. And then he asked like, well, how much does 10 kopecks like buy you? And they told him like, well, I'm trying to help these people. Like giving them like so little money will do nothing to help them.
your even your book says to help these people.
Yeah. And that's cool. Like he was someone who like lived by his values.
Right. He put his money where his mouth is.
Right.
Which I guess was kind of a literal scene too with when he commanded one of his naibs to give money to the poor.
Yeah.
Via right hand and not letting his left hand know that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, that seems interesting because he took that quite literally.
Right.
of like okay, person mouth, right hand handing out cash,
right hand.
left arm, left hand behind back.
Which is interesting. I guess that's a good reminder about the principles of it. That's cool. But anyways, yeah, his death though.
Yeah, let's get to his death. Oh, I guess one thing that bugged me before we do that.
Yeah,
I do not like Leslie calling Istanbul Constantinople still.
Oh, I kind of like just like went right over that. But yeah, the name would have been Istanbul for a few hundred years by that point.
I read that a couple times. Like, why are you calling it that still?
Yeah, was that the norm in like 60s England? I guess it must have been.
I don't know. I guess there's still some Westoids are still butthurt about it. I don't know.
Literally, my dad, like 2 weeks ago, my dad was like, I don't like that they took Constantinople. Like, what? Why bring this up now?
Wait, just randomly, just out of nowhere.
Yeah, I forgot what. Somehow the Ottomans came up, and he's like, yeah, but I don't like them because the Christian city of Constantinople was saying like, what the hell? It looks like it was officially renamed Istanbul in 1930.
Really?
According to Wikipedia, but that was also like what shows up just at. Let's see. The Kievan Rus called it Tsargrad, city of the Caesar. In Persian, the city was called Konstantinopolis, city of Constantine. The modern Turkish name for the city, Istanbul.
What was the Ottoman Turkish name for the city? I'm aware that they leaned pretty heavily into a Roman identity back then.
Oh,
Ottomans wanted to identify themselves as a
like inheritors
Roman empire. Yeah,
that's such a like the Ottomans. I need to read something about the Ottomans. Like that seems like such an interesting blind spot for me. Like I don't like the basis detail. Like I know like Suleiman's campaigns and.
I think Netflix has a pretty decent documentary about the conquest of Constantinople.
I'll look for it. Do you remember what it's called, or?
I think it was like Building of Empires or something.
I'll look it up. Okay, but yeah. So I'm gonna try to be watching that and getting ahead on Dune. I like the idea of reading Dune like fresh out of this. It's gonna be weird not having this to read now.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so it turns out the Turkish name Istanbul was used in colloquial speech in Turkish alongside Konstantiniye, the more formal adaptation of the original Constantinople during the period of Ottoman rule. And Western languages mostly continue to refer to the city as Constantinople until the early 20th century. In 1928, the Turkish alphabet was changed from Arabic script to Latin script as part of the Turkification movement, and they started to urge other countries to use Turkish names for Turkish cities. And I guess that's when they adopted the official name for Istanbul.
Okay. So Leslie is a little behind the times here.
Yeah, still like 1960 by then he should have. And like she went there personally, like she should have known.
Yeah. Like, I guess maybe that's her own leanings.
Yeah. Even though she is such a, I guess that's the Orientalist trap, is that she seems like such a lover of Eastern cultures and like all the different peoples and ways of life. And yet, yeah, she'll call it Constantinople and talk about the harsh Eastern style of rule and all this.
Right.
It is like there is a shadow still. There is a stink of Orientalism.
Even in some of its some of her like romantic leanings, even like you could have this romanticized view of the East and still be Orientalist.
Yeah, it's kind of like not that Leslie's doing this exactly, but it's a little bit like them praising Shamil, in his loss as he's touring the different Russian cities.
It's in the same vein, isn't it?
Yeah.
But so Shamil's death.
Yeah. So it takes like it is a struggle for him to be able to do this pilgrimage. It was also really interesting, like the way that Murid is on like when she like talks about its origins, she compares it to different like strains of Islam, but it's like says like it's like its own thing in the mountains.
Right.
He gets to be in a context where he can be supported in his heresy of saying that he's a prophet, but he's still connected to the greater unity of Islam. And yeah, so he's in Russia. It's a struggle to get permission. It takes years of pleading for him to be able to go to Mecca, like as he sees that he's dying. So he's really thinking about his soul.
I do wonder if that's maybe the greatest crime of Lavsky, the Polish guard.
Right, like all the times like that he like forges his signature to write like these horrible
critiques of the Russian treatment of Poland.
Yeah. And like it's really cool. Shamil kept his secret when he had asked him to not tell that he had tried to get him to
sign that paper and plead for Poland's case.
Yeah. Yeah. He wasn't like fighting for freedom as such, just freedom for his people to live like their authentic selves.
Right.
Yeah, he's just saying it's not my place.
Yeah, and he's a badass for keeping that promise too. Like,
yeah. To someone he hates this guy with good reason.
Right.
And even pleading to have him change for someone else, he's still like that. He doesn't give that up.
No, which is, I think that's a nice display of his character.
Yeah. Yeah, but he finally gets permission. He's like close to death. He gets permission. He goes, like you said, he goes to the Ottoman Empire. When he's talking to the Sultan, like he gets to like ask him like, why didn't you help us?
Yeah, I don't recall the Sultan giving a good answer.
And it's like, I guess like he'd made peace with having lost in the end. Like he had a really strong stoicism about like, well, if it's God's will that I lose after 30 years, then so be it.
He gets a nice house for his family when in the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
And my memory is that stays in the family for quite some time.
Right.
Even after his death.
Mm-hmm. Was it like Qazi? Is it Qazi Muhammad's like? No, I guess it's a different house.
I thought it was Qazi Muhammad's house. Like
was it?
I thought they went back to that. I thought so.
The same house?
It was in the same like district at least. Like
okay.
That district, Koska or something was mentioned a couple times, and
that's on me. I was just like, I was picturing it like kind of in a similar vein to his house in Russia. That was kind of out of the way of the metropolis. But then when we talk about Qazi Muhammad's home or his grandchildren's home. It was, she talked about it being like right on the Bosphorus, but I guess, yeah, so that's why I imagined it farther away, but I don't, I guess I'm not entirely sure where things were.
I'm not sure if that's the case for Saeed and the grandchildren either.
That could be a different house.
I don't know, but in any scenario with his exile, the family seems pretty well positioned within the
Yeah.
Ottoman Empire.
It's like there's like so much in microcosm because then like he takes his family further. They go to Mecca, and he's well received there, and he wants to go further. He wants to go to Medina, and they describe like it's like brutally hot at that time,
Right.
and he wants to stay there longer because he feels like he's gonna die soon, and like his family. So his family's very uncomfortable there, but he's like in this like very important spiritual mission, this call to stay near the center of his faith. He wants to see Qazi Muhammad again, and he's like, please let me see my father too, but they don't want him to be together, or they just procrastinate on answering him.
Kazi is still viewed as a dangerous figure.
Yeah, and maybe it's a sense of like maybe because of that they ended up being proven right, because eventually he joins the Ottomans, right, in fighting Russia.
Yeah.
So sad.
And his refusal to become this viceroy or like governor for the Caucasus either under Russia.
Yeah, and I wonder like maybe if they had let him see his father, but he was also like cooped up, right? He was like he wasn't facing death the same way that Shamil was. Like they emphasized that like to him he was, retreating into the spiritual world, but all these other people that were with him, they were devoted to him, but they were also like young and
just kind of stagnating in that lifestyle compared to what they were used to before.
Yeah. Like I was happy for Hagio, who got to like make things work in his own way. He got to be like, well, someone has to go to the parties. It'd be rude if I didn't go to the parties.
Yeah, he navigated that well, I think.
Yeah. And then unfortunately, I guess he was a little too westernized. He goes back to the Caucasus where things don't go well for him.
Nope. Couple stabbings.
Yeah. There were so many details in that set. Like then he's Medina, he's waiting for his son. He keeps writing letter after letter, and he decides he wants to go back to Mecca.
Yes, but he's in bad shape, right?
Yeah, and the caravan he's in like falls over because it's a 12-day journey through the desert, and halfway there, like on the way there, like there's a bad fall, and then he can't even move. So he's just like in this spot between these two holy places, and he just dies waiting for Qazi Muhammad. Every time like someone enters the door, he thinks it's him that's gonna be there.
Yeah.
When Qazi Muhammad like finally gets permission to go, he finds out in Mecca while he's at the Kaaba, he finds out from someone else that he died. Like
yeah, he finds out from like an old man. Like
yeah,
he yells, "Oh, pray for Imam Shamil." What's interesting about that note there, the tidbit of that old man knowing is that there's no way, like,
yeah,
because it's a 12-day journey from like how it's one of the mysteries, isn't it? How did the old man know?
It does feel like a little bit like there's a touch of magic there.
There is.
But it's just like lets it be a question. It's
instead of okay, well let me answer this right away.
Yeah, man, that's so sad. Like I can see like if he wasn't gonna rebel, before, he certainly like he has more reasons to now.
Oh, he's mad now.
And the other thing about about like his death is that for a while the spot where he dies becomes like another kind of monument. It's like interesting that this spot between the two holiest sites in Islam, and he gets like a small area where people can go. It's like he's like an important enough figure that way. But eventually, even that is destroyed by was it like the Saudis?
Al Saud or whatever.
Saud.
Yeah, it is interesting that he's so like strongly placed within this more mainstream Islamic context, even after calling himself, Allah's second prophet.
Yeah, who knows what they did? Yeah, Leslie Blanch didn't go into why his monument was destroyed. But I assume it has something to do with like religious, political interests.
No, no idolatry ever of
Hmm.
anyone was my suspicion.
Yeah, but like regardless of the cause, it's like it's another thing of like I guess like, it's so telling of like the way this ending plays out. I keep going back to like that kind of like that sort of like turn of history thing. Sorry.
Mhm.
Uh, he has his place in history. He's like, even in defeat, he's widely remembered, and he still is that. But like, what gets a monument, what doesn't, is you know, is seemingly arbitrary. Doesn't really capture the vibrancy of the period.
No,
Like it's yeah, like Baryatinsky gets like a rock that says Baryatinsky on it.
that's all. That's all it was, and it was like his command too, right? Like he
Yeah,
didn't want like any fancy
like
quote of that moment.
yeah, it's interesting, and and like we I guess I don't remember if it was before we started the conversation, but even Russia's triumph in the Caucasus was one that was plagued by resistance.
It was like a seat where Bolsheviks would publish their works towards resistance
Yeah.
and
And yeah, and emphasizing like Stalin as a Georgian, like it was like almost like the mountains themselves, like the Caucasus got the last laugh over Tsarist Russia.
yeah, no, that seems to be the movement of history. I learned a lot about this region through this book and read. I never quite appreciated or understood all the weight that region of the Black Sea and
Yeah,
the Caspian and the weight that Georgia, Dagestan.
Chechnya.
There's a strong weight in the direction that Russian history went after that.
I only knew about Caucasian as like the term people use for white people for arbitrary reasons.
Right.
They use like, what are Caucasians like? All I would be able to say is like they drive like this. Uh, but yeah, outside of like whatever like the character of this region, yeah, it's placed in history, especially Russian history, and it's in general world history because it's Russian history as an empire, which like I think like the definition of an empire is like a place that tries to put its fingers in other places.
Yeah, that's a good definition. Tries to put his fingers in other places.
That's that's what Pliny the Elder said about empires.
I think so.
Yeah, great read. I think, and like the hook of like we talk about the mixed blessing that the sort of romanticism that Leslie Blanche sees everything through, but it's a great in to have that kind of to pull you in through the emotion of these struggles.
It's a good read for sure. I would recommend it to just about anyone.
Yeah.
They might have some difficulty with some of the prose and length of the chapters.
Yeah, it's just like sort of it's like a little slower paced and long.
I find myself so interested in like the Caucasus groups. I kind of struggled a little bit getting through a lot of the Russian exploration of things. I might find some of them less interesting. Like
Oh, or like the parties and the intrigue of this person
yeah,
was married to that
um,
person. I see what you're saying.
like those tended to carry on the longest. Not that it was like bad or that there was a parts where the book was slow.
Yeah. Like and like I think it's like also like even Leslie Blanche's like interests are more cursory there. Like the descriptions of the Winter Palace and the snow and St. Petersburg and its golden headed.
I do like her description of those places and those physical buildings and those cities.
Yeah.
That was cool.
But like whenever there was like a story of like this person and that person, even like the reason I remembered the Princess Davidova is just because she said it so much, not necessarily because of like her character.
Right.
And I guess its implications like that being the cause for Baryatinsky's downfall, despite having the Tsar's favor. What I'm saying, like the drama itself isn't as interesting as its consequences.
Right. Well, you can tell when she's interested in these characters or not based on how much she builds the scenes for them to like interpersonally interact.
It was a good balance of like when something is written out as a scene versus here's what my sources were able to say. No, it's a fascinating book.
Definitely. Even even the epilogue was good too. You know, I really contemplated not reading the epilogue either. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
I reached the end. It was cool. It got to give more scope of these characters and
yeah.
credits for afterwards.
The way it was formatted was a nice way to, because we spent so long, like even the way obviously reading it in a book club format, it took us 3 months to read it. So I've been in it for a while. It was nice to be able to like say goodbye, and going back to Lord of the Rings, it's like Return of the King, where like people say it has 6 endings.
Yeah,
It was nice to get like 11 separate goodbyes to the people that were around Shamil's orbit.
yeah. She like, I think she hit up about everyone.
Mm-hmm.
She hit Vorontsov. She hit up the
Yep.
sons, even the grandchildren. Like a couple generations
Yeah.
later,
Mm-hmm.
it was nice closure for sure.
Yeah, and I also like. I think the very ending was, I think, like a really nice close. Like obviously saying like in the end he fought for freedom, all that we talked about before, but also like it's a nice way to close it. Like it feels complete with the epilogue. It's a nice way to close it because like in the beginning you have these descriptions of like, oh, Georgia now has these spas and you can go to this statue where this Christian woman was revered for doing her best to try to convert people or something. I forgot the exact story, but you have this description of like this placid place where these histories had happened, and then it like blooms to life with this, with the book that we read,
Yeah,
and then it goes back to these faded portraits and like the way the USSR is like unsure what to do with this legacy, like the way it zooms back out to the, I guess, the relatively stable normal of the 1960s.
right.
It was a nice way of I don't know, like in Titanic there.
Yeah. Oh no, that's a great comparison. Yeah, because she goes back to the scope of like the tear up banners that they would have
Mm-hmm.
used,
Yeah,
100 years before, and these rusted materials that were finally returned to
yeah.
Dagestan, sitting in museums. But she zooms back out into the natural landscape, much like the Titanic, right? Where
Yeah, it's like the roses memories.
right, Rose's memories, in contrast to this ruined ship under this
Mm-hmm.
deep ocean, but
Yeah,
it's still
like it's compelling as ruins is like horrible to say about Caucasus. It's a place that's alive today, has its people and traditions, and they still do the Lezginka and all that. But talking about the Titanic, like it's compelling as ruins in the bottom of the ocean, as well as what those ruins remind you of like this vivid memory, this doomed romance and
yeah,
all that. Obviously with that story, it's just like a ship fell, and the Murid cause, or the Caucasian resistance against Russia, is such a more rich and interesting. Like she sees it from different angles, and she gives us enough like irony to like look at these narratives with a little bit of suspicion. Um, but it's something that like there's 100 more histories to write about just this particular time and these people.
right,
It's such a rich like place to mine for stories, at least.
right. Whether they're historically based like this or science fiction.
Yeah. Right, and we'll see about that on the next Pleasant Evenings.
Yeah, I'm nervous about rereading it now. I wonder if I'll appreciate it less.
I mean, it is one of the classics. Like maybe I guess
Yeah,
like with Sabres of Paradise in mind as you read it, like all the stuff that you thought was from the blessed head of Frank Herbert.
right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think what I'm going to be wondering the entire time is like, does Dune have less weight now, knowing that it's like this?
Oh, like watered down version of like this real life like struggle.
Yeah, I mean, do I want to say whitewash? Does whitewash work here? Like,
I get what you're saying. Instead of Shamil, it's Paul.
Right? Yeah,
It's
exactly.
I went to the theater to the movies with my girlfriend who hadn't seen like any of the Dune movies. There's no like connection to Dune, and like she sees the trailer and you know Timothée Chalamet's character comes out and she like turns to me like, wait, his name is Paul. Like, yeah, we'll see. I think I'm gonna come at it from the opposite way because I've only seen the movies and I had such a good time reading this book that I'm gonna be a little bit frustrated. Like, this isn't Sabres of Paradise enough.
Right.
Well, we'll see. I'm sure we'll meet in the middle, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. So coming attractions is Dune, and then hopefully there'll still be some appetite for for stuff about the Dune of it all as well. And on the other side of the podcast, on the Gundam side, we're going to be jumping into Mobile Suit Fighter G Gundam. G Fighter? What?
Mobile Fighter
G
Gundam. Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be fun.
Any closings or thoughts? I think we did good covering this.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll, just because it's so long, I wonder if I'll ever reread it, but I'll be like, this book is going to stay with me for sure in one way or another. I always talk about reading things at the beach. I wouldn't say no.
You know, I appreciate that it garnered more interest in me seeking other sources, such as that George and Arthur author I had opened with.
Was it the Tolstoy, Haji Murad?
Oh yeah, that's another thing too.
Lermontov and
Lermontov. I'm interested in. I had never heard that author before.
Yeah. Anyways, until next time, it's been Pleasant Evenings Book Club, and we hope that all the listeners at home let us know what you think. But by the when this is out, let us know what you think about Dune. If maybe we'll get the chance to read some of it when we record about Dune. But most of all, is have a pleasant evening.
May every evening be pleasant. This is Corbin signing off.
Yeah, Roberto signing
More
off.
to come.
Yeah. Good night.